The next public comment is D. Wiseman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have already sent out to most of you, and if anyone else would like a copy, a document discussing how to create a community impact statement. That document was made with the very helpful support of Shannon Hoppus at the City Clerk's Office. It's a guideline to setting up and sending community impact statements. The only thing I want to emphasize is that any of your councils put a community impact statement in on a given council file, it only works for that council file, and council takes the same subject matter and gives it new numbers, S1, S2, S3, S4. And if you really are concerned about that item, you have to follow it and put a council file down on every one of them. My neighborhood council has a policy that we don't have to go back to the board to get approval to do that if the subject matter is the same. And I suggest your councils may want to consider that. You may want to publicize that. The other thing I brought to you is a copy of a Wisemanized yellow white pages. The budget advocates each year put out white pages. Well, Wiseman does too. And essentially, this is the white pages, plus some other things I think are worth your consideration. There are copies at the back table if you like them. Now, the real reason I came here is because Doug Eberhard wrote an article, and it was published today in the Empower LA newsletter about the factual-based stakeholders. And you know that's something very close to my heart. I claim to be the only real factual-based stakeholder in the city, and I'll be glad to dispute anybody who thinks otherwise. But basically, a factual-based stakeholder is somebody who does not live, work, or own property in a given community, but wants to participate and have full rights and privileges of a stakeholder in that neighborhood council. Originally, you all know that the original plan had a shopping list of extra options that the person might be able to point to qualify as a factual-based stakeholder. That was thought to be clumsy, incomplete, not satisfactory by the Neighborhood Council Review Commission, and in 2007 or 2008, they published the definition that we now have. Live, work, or own property, and declares a desire to be a neighborhood council person, affirms and gives a factual basis for it. Well, this is all well and good, and I fully support the idea, but the problem is, when somebody wants to be a factual-based stakeholder at any given neighborhood council, there's no approval method. There's no way for that person to show that they truly are a qualified and a recognized stakeholder. So what I've been proposing for several years now, and that I propose to you again in the document that's before you, that prior approval be provided to anybody who wants to be a factual-based stakeholder and be given the privileges of a full-fledged lives, works, and owns property type stakeholder. There are only 4 things that separate that stakeholder from a participant. Anybody can come to our meetings, participate, speak in public comment. You know all of those things. But before you become a factual-based stakeholder, you have to affirm something, and I think in order to solve many of the problems, prior approval should be given. And that has to happen before you do any of the 4 things that our stakeholder can do. That's to be on a standing committee, to be on a board of governors, to vote for bylaws, changes, and revisions, and most important, the right to vote. The so-called Starbucks stakeholder.
Mr. Wiseman, if you could wrap up your comments, please.
I'm coming to that. Yes.
No, I mean
the stakeholder who comes with a receipt from a local vendor to the elections and expects to be accepted to vote is somebody we're all concerned with and not happy with. But if that person had even attended one meeting before that election was occurred and was granted the privilege, they would have the recognition necessary, and we'd have a lot less difficulty. I hope you'll consider these thoughts because I think it helps to solve some of the key issues in the stakeholder definition. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My apologies for running over, but I do that.
Next speaker is Joseph Reiser.
Thank you, and thank you for coming to the east side. I'm so glad that the president of the host neighborhood council spoke before I did, because I didn't want it to look like I was usurping any of his position. But I wondered if you knew that this was also the smallest neighborhood council in the city of Los Angeles. Some of you know my hidden agenda. It's not so hidden. It's the open agenda for saying that this is the smallest neighborhood council in the city of Los Angeles. What you may not know is this neighborhood council, Elysian Valley Riverside, which I'm not a part of. I'm a couple of exits up the freeway there. Also cast more votes in the last election after only 3 years of resurfacing like a phoenix than 4 of the 5 largest neighborhood councils in the city, including Wilshire Center, Koreatown with 100,000 stakeholders, Van Nuys with 78,000 stakeholders, and Pacoima with 73,000 stakeholders. And why do I tell you that? Well, some of you know already. It's to make a point that this is about participation, not sheer numbers. And so I continue to beat that drum to you in public comment, and I'm actually making this a prologue to maybe another statement if I can hang around that long for your session on number 11. But keep that in mind. The 5 largest neighborhood councils, 5 smallest neighborhood councils in the city outvoted 2-1 in participation of the 5 largest neighborhood councils in the city. They also, in terms of participation within their neighborhood council percentage-wise, had 15 times as much participation as the largest neighborhood councils in the city. We'll get back.
Thank you very much. And then the last comment for general public comment is Jose Segala.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you about a couple of issues that have arisen up in the Echo Park Neighborhood Council area. As many of you know, I had the pleasure and honor to serve there for 6 years as president, and it was a great opportunity to be involved and do a lot of great things. Last year we had elections in October, which allowed a new board to transition over. Unfortunately, our funds were frozen because of the lack of reconciliation forms that were submitted, paperwork, and so forth. Just a couple of weeks ago, everything was put in order by the new treasurer, and the department has accepted and unfrozen the funds. However, there's a couple of things that come up that I think were troubling that we've been trying to bring attention to the department and wanted to come and bring to your attention. Since October the 23rd through April the 10th of this year, there were thousands of dollars that were allocated or expended without board approval, board knowledge, board discussion, or board deliberation or stakeholder input. I've heard from different sources, including Jay Handel, who has been sort of the mentor. It's hard to distinguish him being a mentor or actually being the pseudo neighborhood council president in Echo Park. He pretty much runs the show. That there's a couple of policies that are not being followed by the department that I wanted to bring to your attention. First of all, anything that's approved by Apple One or Continental Interpreting or Service gets an auto deduction sent to the department directly. The department, according to its own website, its own treasurer handbook, is supposed to notify board members that there is a bill to be paid. If you got a problem with it, let us know. Well, thousands, $2,400 were paid without any single board member knowing what had happened. Even though the auto deductions were prepared, and I have a copy from Mr. Park and anyone else of these documents. The board president was advised by department staff that he can go ahead and spend money out of his own pocket for administrative items and not have to go to the board, so he didn't. So there's about $3,500 of expenses. Half of those have already been paid by the department automatically. I talked to the controller's office, and they're looking at their own process because they take at face value whatever Dunn gives them to pay, even though it may not have the proper backup as required in your own policies in terms of having board votes, board minutes. And so Ms. Groh's office is looking into why they pay thousands of dollars without having perhaps the proper paperwork. There's a number of issues that have arisen in Echo Park, in particular with the board president. I understand that he has a work place, some violence investigation going on with his the sort of treatment of board members, his being a bully, his being short with people, being disrespectful. And I'll just take a few more seconds if I can. But what I'd like to ask this commission, and I reached out to Mr. Park, and unfortunately we didn't connect, is I'd like for the bank to look into this matter. It's very hard to have a department investigate itself when there was wrongdoing by the department and trying to cover it up. So I would like for Bond, Mr. Park in particular, to perhaps note this and take a look at what's going on, because I think there's bigger policies than this particular board president and his actions. I think that the auto deduction needs to be reinstated. I think board members need to vote publicly on how to spend money and not have one person take on that responsibility. So I'm going to leave this for Mr. Park, which is a lot of the stuff that we got through public records requests and other requests from the department that shows some of this. And in the cover letter that shows that everybody, all 20 other members, have to take a training because one board president intimidated and physically altercated with one of your staffers or the department staffer, which I think you should be responsible for making sure that all of your staff feel comfortable and safe at each neighborhood council meeting.
Thank you very much.
Those need to be.
Well, I'll give her one.
The whole entire package.
This is the same thing. Are you Ms. Phillips?
If this.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Sure. That makes a lot, makes sense. Okay, I don't have any further general public comment cards, so why don't we move on to the next agenda item, number 5, verbal update from a representative of the Office of Mayor Antonio Villalobos, Neighborhood and Community Services. I did not see the representative here today, so we might be coming back if the individual shows up. Agenda item number 6, General Manager's report. General Manager Liu.
Hi, good evening.
Here.
Thank you. It's not on. Hi, Gracie Liu, General Manager for Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. Good evening, commissioners and stakeholders. Just a brief report on the department activities. We are right now in the middle of budget hearings. Last Friday, we did go before the Budget and Finance Committee and to discuss our request based on the current budget. We specifically are asking for any unused salary savings from this current fiscal year, as well as unused election outreach funding that was not used this current fiscal year to be moved from this current fiscal year to next fiscal year, and we are requesting that those monies be put into a funding as needed staff account. We had asked for $250,000 for that account, and I'm grateful that the mayor and CAO's offices were able to find at least $40,000 for us, but I think with the establishment of the new checking account system and the troubleshooting and adjustments to policies and procedures that I expect will need to happen in the new fiscal year, that we're going to need a little more support than the $40,000. We also requested $20,000 for Congress and Budget Day support, or Budget Advocate support, so we are hoping that they will consider those items. They're also looking into our position deletions as well as the additions, and I did provide report backs giving them a small analysis of the various work duties for each of the positions and how that would affect the department based on their addition or deletion. I think that the budget hearings have really raised the awareness, and this actually goes to Mr. Cherno's comments in terms of appropriate staffing for the department, and not only the department, but the Office of the City Attorney for their Neighborhood Council Vice Division. A lot of these planning land use issues require an attorney. I mean, often I see developer side brings an attorney, and then we have our neighborhood council sitting there maybe feeling a little intimidated, not really sure what to say, even though they're advisory, depending on the neighborhood council, the planning department will take their recommendations pretty seriously. And I think as neighborhood councils grow into their new responsibilities, that we will have to deal with properly staffing not only the department but the city attorney's office to provide adequate support to the neighborhood councils. The other things that we're working on right now are implementing the new funding program, and we have put out an initial overview of the new checking account system and some of the policies and procedures that we expect to utilize. We've received a lot of feedback, and I'm very appreciative of that, so thank you to those who are providing such feedback. It helps us to solidify the final policies and procedures that we'll go over with the controller's office. We hope to have the checking accounts open by mid-June at the latest, so that we will be able to fund them that first week of July. And incorporated in that will be, obviously trainings to how to use them. It's very similar to online banking. So if folks are used to that, then, it should be an easy transition. And it will be likely there will be a debit card attached to the checking account, so that the neighborhood councils will have easier access for those vendors who don't take checks. We're also starting a bunch of outreach for neighborhood council elections. Thanks to Stephen Box, our outreach coordinator. We're doing streaming video, just raising awareness. I'm sure you've seen our cards that say keep calm and empower LA, and we're doing a campaign with people taking pictures and how they empower LA, and we're putting together materials. The department doesn't even have a brochure for our neighborhood council system, so we're actually doing our own materials so that we can assist neighborhood councils with providing templates for neighborhood council information, so that they can start doing that election outreach, since we are funded for it for spring of 2014. And then the last thing that we're working on too is updating leases, contracts, and thanks to Jeff Burrell, our manager of administration, who's here tonight, we're discussing another agenda item. He's really been trying to follow up with neighborhood councils to get everybody on track with the proper contracts that are needed, particularly for personal services like web designers, which most folks are just using without having any kind of agreement. And we've seen, as I've said to you before, disputes arising where the web designer basically just shuts down the website and they lose all content. So we are trying to do and provide a list of approved vendors, and we'll ask those vendors to abide by certain rules, such as providing the domain password, and that the information on that domain would be the property of the neighborhood council and not theirs to take and shut down. So those are some of the things that we're trying to race and work on for the last month and a half this fiscal year. And I'm happy to entertain any questions at this point.
Commissioner Beck?
I just want to commend you and your staff on that lovely day and lovely morning in City Hall on April 26th. That was such a beautiful opportunity for the neighborhood councils to get recognized. And, I know it was some strategy and work to make that happen. So great job to get the neighborhood councils recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner. And that, a lot of that work was Commissioner Schaefer doing the footwork for us, to follow up with Councilmember Zine, and again Stephen Box for doing a lot of great outreach and getting folks really motivated for that event. And I think it went really well. Thank you for Commissioner Everhart for being there, and Commissioner Mack. You heard how complimentary the council members were about the neighborhood council system in general, so it was great.
Exactly what we need to bolster, in preceding the budget process. Yes, the timing was good.
Commissioner Lux?
Yeah, I wanted to say I'm pleased to hear that you are finding some policy around vendors for website development, because there are a lot of problems with that, and I think it's really, really wise. and especially, and also be trying to have more attorney help. I think a lot of neighborhood councils get into trouble without more hands-on help. So thank you for that.
Of course.
Any other questions, Commissioner Eber?
I don't know, this may actually be a question for our city attorney. If someone has a complaint about a neighborhood council board member regarding the possibility that they are acting in an unethical manner, is it possible for someone to file a complaint with the City Ethics Commission?
Yes. The easy answer is yes. That would be the appropriate agency to follow up with investigation or complaint regarding an individual board member.
And just a follow-up on that, with respect to some of the issues that were raised during general public comment, without getting into details, can you either confirm that these complaints have been lodged with the department and that some action is being taken, or?
Yes, I can confirm that the complaints have been lodged with the department. We are taking action. We are looking at the situation. I do want to clarify that when neighbor council's funds are frozen, ongoing administrative costs are still allowable and can be paid out, particularly in GPANC's case where these expenses were in the budget approved by the former board prior to their election. So, we understand the concerns that are going on, and we are definitely working with the city attorney's office to resolve them.
Similarly with Mid-City, the issues that we raised?
Yes, I didn't know particularly about the planning issues that Mr. Cherno brought up, and I do think it's a valid point. I know Plan Check NC, it does go around and train folks, neighbor council leaders, on how to properly review planning issues and applications. The issue is it's not a mandated training, so there may be neighbor councils that are engaged in planning land issues that may not necessarily know the proper way to review such cases. In regards to the other trademark issue with the art walk, we are working with city attorney on this. We actually did provide information to the neighbor council on how to proceed, and they have not taken any action so far, and we're actually in the process of reminding them, giving them a friendly reminder that they do need to actually resolve this matter.
And then last follow-up question from my end, which is, and I might miss it, but what's the projected rollout of the new credit or the check and debit card system?
So we are aiming for July 1st, which means that the ordinance has to be passed by City Council that actually authorizes it. City Attorney's Office, they have completed the language for it, and hopefully it will go to City Council soon. Councilmember Parks has reviewed the draft language and is amenable to waiving it through committee so that it gets the 2 readings before we hit June, which would start, putting a lot of pressure on us to get the system in place in time.
Great. Any other questions from the commission? I have one speaker card here for this agenda item, and that's Jose Sigala.
You want another one?
Yes, I wanted to speak under the 6.2, I guess, item number 2 on the staffing and budget. I forgot to give you guys, this is a DVD of Jay Handel speaking at an executive committee, talking about how he does not want the neighborhood council's fingerprints to be on what they're working on at the department, and that it's a done deal, they're going to take care of it. I have to disagree with Ms. Liu. I wrote the budget in our neighborhood council for 5 years straight, and the budget that we adopted last June had nothing of staffing for Apple One or services. And it's in that material that they reference, and that's how I initially got the call on April 2nd asking me, because my name was on the letter, did you guys have money to spend for these expenditures? No. As a result, the department quickly has been working with the president. They put together a new budget, and the new budget was not adopted until March. And therefore, now they're using that new budget as the excuse to pay for expenditures that were done last year without board approval, without board discussion. Jay Handel is on videotape saying that neighborhood councils whose funds are frozen cannot vote, board members cannot vote, but yet they're allowed to spend money as the board president. And there's numerous emails that we've been trying to find that show that the department advised the board president and said, go ahead and spend the money. And I think what happened is they got caught up. The department went ahead and didn't do its due diligence. They didn't follow its own treasurer's handbook, where required board allocation, board approval to spend these funds. So therefore, they're trying to cover it up. And that's why I'm asking the commissioners, Mr. Park in particular, to go ahead and look at this. It's hard for a department who's made mistakes, and they might be genuine, good-hearted mistakes, but it's hard to ask them to look at themselves when they know that there was problems that went from the beginning. So I'm asking the commission to really look at what happens, particularly the auto deductions. There's no reason why they were done. Here are the letters of the expenditures that were made back in January, back in November. There's no reason why someone couldn't email them to all the board members like they've done in the past. So they dropped the ball there. So we have to make sure that the department follows its own policies and procedures, and that's why we're here. And finally, I don't think it's proper for Jay Handel, who is a volunteer, to represent the department general manager. And that's how he comes across, very arrogant, very demeaning of people, because yes, I've been sent here by Gracie Liu, and I speak on her behalf. There are a lot of great city employees that can do that, and it doesn't require Jay Handel to do so. And again, please take a look at the workplace violence concern that's been raised by one of your staff members. It is inappropriate for a city staff member to be berated, verbally and physically intimidated by a neighborhood council president and let it go without being accounted for. So please take a look at that. The letter that I sent you basically punishes the rest of the board by requiring them to do training once again, just because this one individual can't take care of his own behavior. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wiseman?
Comment, obviously. The fact that we have so many more people in neighborhood council activities all around, I think, can be attributed to the hard work of Steve Box, and I want to publicly thank him here for that. When you went to the city council budget and finance on Friday, did they consider or take any action, hopefully, on the $680,000 necessary for the neighborhood council elections in 2014?
Do you want to finish your public comment and I can address all your questions?
That's a question.
Okay, I just don't want to cut into your public comment.
Wouldn't want to lose the thought.
They provided us with $576,000, which is sufficient on our side to conduct the elections. The city clerk was provided $100,000 to perform their part of the back office.
That's wonderful news. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Why don't we move on to
may I just make one brief comment? I just want to say in regards to Mr. Segala's allegations that the department covers up items. We don't do that. So we've been very open and have worked with city attorney hand in hand in this regard.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions? Okay. Why don't we move on to the next agenda item, number 7, discussion and motion to retroactively amend the Olympic Park Neighborhood Council contract with a Los Angeles Neighborhood Initiative to extend the terms of the contract from December 31st, 2012 to December 31st, 2013.
I'm going to recuse myself.
Is there?
We need 4 votes.
Because I'm the chairman. I'm the president of the board.
Oh, okay. So we're not going to be able. We're not going to have the votes to be able to take the action on this.
Lonnie.
Okay. Hi, Jeff Brill, Neighborhood Empowerment. Good evening, Commissioners. Basically, in a nutshell, it's just.
So I think we may have to change it. We're going to have to do this.
So, yes, another. Well, is there any, I guess, benefit in getting an update without Commissioner Mack participating and us not being able to take a vote today?
May I think we should have the 4 commissioners who would be a quorum to vote on this to hear the item. Because for 3 of us to hear the item, but not the 4th, you
No,
see what I'm saying?
But we would have to take it up again at another
Yeah,
meeting.
but I'm saying we should have the full presentation to that 4th person who provides a voting quorum on this item. So, I mean, I would move right now just to continue this item to the next meeting.
Okay, so, Commissioner Everhart moves, Commissioner Buck seconds. In terms of, I just have a follow-up question for General Manager before we take the motion on this, which is there a benefit to getting the full presentation today and then getting the same full presentation at the next meeting to be able to take the vote? Okay, so.
There's no vote because the 4th person can't vote. So that was
No, I agree.
It's
Okay.
not a motion.
So given
I
that,
withdraw my second.
is there a second to table the motion?
We can't.
To table the item?
No. What I'm suggesting is the motion be continued to our next meeting.
And that's the motion on the table.
Yeah, and that we not hear anything because we would just have to hear it
City
again.
Attorney, can we vote on postponing this item with the 4th member voting, who's recusing herself from the item?
No, she can have any involvement with this
So we don't
issue
have
at all.
people to vote on the motion, we just do it.
Tonight, right.
To continue.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to have to continue this.
Think about that. All right.
Unfortunately.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I mean, that's not your fault.
So we'll just have
You're probably
Yeah.
confusing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I just hate to inconvenience you. You came to this for that.
It's okay, it's just part of the job, that's fine.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Good to see you though, Jeff.
But that's fine, we'll take it up at next meeting. It's not, yes, we'll agendize it and hopefully we'll have the quorum with everyone. Okay. All right, why don't we move on to the next agenda item, recognition and presentation of 10-year anniversary certificates to Atwater Village Neighborhood Council and the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. So at this time, why don't we do the certificate presentations? I see several members of the representatives from each of the neighborhood councils. And then after we take photos, we'll go on to agenda item number 9, where representatives will have an opportunity to speak about best practices and their experiences. So the first neighborhood council up here is Silver Lake.
Atwater was actually about 10 minutes into the Silver Lake.
Oh, yeah.
So let me get you that. You want to get in? Silver Lake? You're Silver Lake. Okay, let's hear it for Silver Lake. Rusty Millar, Neighborhood Council. Rusty Millar, Neighborhood Council. Yeah, hardest working guy. Okay, one more. This one's Rusty's camera. I was just telling Rusty, I get more phones with the cameras this way.
Don't drop it.
And
Where's your assistant?
Wait a minute.
right, yeah. Okay, we got it.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rusty.
Thanks, Rusty. Good to see you.
I was joking, you were referring to Sydney.
Atwater Village?
Yes, we have Atwater Village.
Cell phones on the chair, right?
All right. Spread out. Or some could. Gentlemen, you stand up right behind this. Oh, yeah. Come forward. Yeah, that's good. Oh, look at that. That's very nice. That's very nice. Oh, yes.
Just like being a member of the wedding party.
That's the fun part. This makes up for the rest.
Is there going to be a
90%
champagne
ceremonial,
toast later?
and then 1%.
This makes us smile.
All right, one more. Oh, beautiful. All right. Hey, before you, commission before you go, can I get a picture of the commission? With our, yeah, with board members?
She's all like, I'm not ready.
Okay, okay. Hey, wait, you switched cameras again. You always pull that on me. Oh, man. Gracie, come on. Oh, yeah, that's nice. The man facing one way and the other. Got a designer on the commission. So let me look at the camera. Let's do one more.
We're going to Photoshop this.
You know, I have my camera set so he's in every photo.
Oh, he's always there.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so item number 9, discussion with various East Area neighborhood council representatives who wish to report concerns, operations, and best practices. Neighborhood council representatives should complete the questionnaire. You didn't need to complete the questionnaire. If representatives of the Silver Lake and Atwater neighborhood councils or any other East Area neighborhood councils that want to speak on this item, we have some time to discuss. So you could come up, introduce yourself, and share with us news from your neighborhood councils.
Okay, how you doing? I'm Jeff. I'm with the Elysian Valley Neighborhood Council. Thank you for letting me speak. I got drafted about. Sorry. I got drafted about 30 minutes ago to just come and speak before you. So I made a few notes on what's been going on in Elysian Valley and just some issues to bring up from our board president. I'm the secretary and the outreach chair for the neighborhood council. And so just a little background on what we've been doing in Elysian Valley. We were really excited about during the primary election, we had a candidate forum where we were able to invite all 10 city council candidates for CD13. It was a great event. It was the largest event we ever put on in Elysian Valley. We had over 250 people show up from the community to attend that event. We heard from all the candidates. We had it co-moderated by, Univision and Patch, and we had a number of other media present. So that was a really exciting event. We've been trying to use the momentum from that event to keep things going, and we're going to be having a second candidate forum next week. Actually, a week from today, and it'll be here in this auditorium. It's going to be a lot more intimate and low-key, and what we're doing a little bit different with this candidate forum is we're soliciting questions from everyone in the community, and then we'll find the best questions and present those to the candidates. I'll give them a little more time. Since we had 10 candidates last time, we were only allowing everyone between 1 or 2 minutes to reply. So this will allow the community a lot more opportunity to hear from the candidates in a little more, as I said, intimate environment. So that's been a big focus last few months. In addition to some of the other activities, we've been working a lot with the various LA River organizations. One of the things that we've been building up for is that the LA River, parts of it is being turned into a recreation zone. And so we've been working on that. We've been working with the arts communities. We have our yearly Frogtown Art Walk and some of the other events coming up. So some of the regular events that we're really trying to build up and bring attention not only to the community, but also bring attention to the neighborhood council and kind of use some of these events to help each other out. And one other thing that we're trying to get our neighborhood council to bond a little bit. We've had a little bit of turnover and a lot of our board members, maybe half of them are first-time board members, so we're planning a retreat for our neighborhood council that'll be coming up in June. So that's some of the events, a little bit about what goes on here in Elysian Valley. It's a very unique community. I don't know how many people are familiar with it. We have a lot of not as many apartment buildings as on the east side, a lot more houses and single-family homes, and we are very involved in the environment and the arts community, so it makes it a very unique community. It's a very close community. We have only about 2,500 households within the community, so it's pretty small, and everyone kind of knows each other in the community, so it's pretty exciting. And then just a personal story I was encouraged to share. We have a new person who moved across the street from where I live. My wife went across the street while she was walking the dogs, decided to meet this person. This was maybe about a week ago. They just bought the house. And, and I'm sure everyone can relate who's involved with the neighborhood council. You always think you're spinning your wheels so much and you're not getting that much back in the community, and we're so critical of what we do within our own neighborhood council, we never think it's enough. At least that's how I feel. And it was really encouraging because we went across the street, my wife's talking to this neighbor, and they're saying, "Oh, hey, welcome to the neighborhood, just want to meet." And then at the end of the conversation, the neighbor says, "Oh, can I ask you a question? I heard there's a really active community organization in the neighborhood." And my wife said, "Do you mean the neighborhood council?" And she says, "Yeah, the neighborhood council." And it was really encouraging because this person had only been in the neighborhood for a few days and she had already heard about the neighborhood council. So it made me feel a lot better, and I was feeling a little down that week, so it helped perk me up. So, and then also just wanted to pass on one more piece of information from our board president. He wanted to emphasize the push towards electronic documents for the grant process, making it a lot more electronic filing and applications and so forth, not just for the neighborhood council, but also for applicants and so forth. So he wanted to bring that up and maybe something that we could consider pushing towards in the future, which I think is already happening, but he wanted to stress that. Okay, thanks so much.
Questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Mack?
When is your art walk?
It's in September 28th, I believe.
Okay.
Bob, do you know the exact date? Oh, great. Bob, this is Bob. He's with our neighborhood council, and also Glenda back there. She's also with the neighborhood council.
Great. Thank you. So you're chair of outreach. What are your outreach challenges? It sounds like you're doing a pretty good job given your story, but...
I think it's the same challenges a lot of us face, where we just are constantly trying to connect to the community, and just try to get our neighborhood council out there. There's a lot of events. Trying to get to all the events is sometimes a little bit of a challenge, and just trying to think of creative ways. One of the things we probably don't do as good of a job with in Elysian Valley, and something I would like to try to orient towards, is outreach to small businesses. And I think that's just kind of the nature of the community, because we don't have a lot of small businesses. It's almost all residential, but there are a few, and we have some individual small businesses within people's homes. So an organization, not the neighborhood council, but one of the Girl Scouts organizations, put together a small business directory. And we're trying to work with them on reaching out to some of the small businesses, because I think that's an area that we're lacking. And also, we're really making a big push towards trying to make a lot of our events bilingual, especially within the Spanish-speaking community. And one thing we were really proud of with the candidate forum, Univision had reported that it was the first fully bilingual candidate forum, at least for this area. I don't know what area they were speaking in, but at least within CD13. And so that was really exciting for us, because we basically asked one question in English and then one question in Spanish, and had it translated both ways. So that was pretty exciting.
What are the demographics?
Glenda, you can maybe speak about that. I'm a little newer in the community. Glenda's been here maybe longer.
We have a lot of Hispanics, Vietnamese, and Filipinos, and Anglo.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Any other questions? Yes.
Commissioner Lewis.
Yes, a couple. How big is your board and what's the composition, male, female?
We have 15 board members. We have, it's pretty diverse. I was talking about that with someone recently. I want to say maybe it's split half female, half male. And we've been getting a few younger board members. In fact, one of the things we pushed for is to change our bylaws so we could have someone 18 on the board. We want to have someone who's 18 years old. She's on the board. She's been involved, and pretty exciting. She's doing way more than I did when I was 18. So, but she's great. And we had another young gentleman who's still in college, and so he's Hispanic. She's Hispanic, and we have a pretty diverse board.
So that's my next one. Diversity is like ethnic diversity, and how does that break down?
Yeah,
and renters and owners, that sort of thing.
I think just about everyone, except for maybe a few, are owners within the neighborhood, and then I think the rest are renters. Everyone lives within Elysian Valley, so we do have a couple small business owners, but we don't have anyone who does not live within the Elysian Valley community. And demographically, as far as ethnicity, I can't say offhand, but it is pretty diverse. The numbers I don't, But I would be happy to provide that if you'd like.
Yeah, we always like to know that.
Okay.
Just to see if there's enough outreach to the whole, based on the demographics. If you're reaching out to make sure that it tries to match at least the demographics.
Yeah, that's one of the things we always talk about. And I could email you the demographic breakdown.
Curious.
Sure.
And then how do you spend your money?
Most of our money goes, in the past, we've spent most of it for grants, neighborhood purpose grants, and also schools. Doris Place, for example, has been a beneficiary of some of that. And over the last year, we've been doing more outreach events. We've been trying to put, most of the money will still go to neighborhood purpose grants, but we've been trying to do more outreach events. We spent some money on this candidate forum, which really did an amazing, I think out of anything we could have done, that was money well spent, especially because I think personally every single city council candidate, or almost every single one, came up to me and said this was the best event they'd ever been to. And I think things like that really, they'll remember that when they get into office, whoever it is, and they'll say, oh, Elysian Valley, they really have their act together because that was an awesome event that we were at. So we've been trying to do events like that and support other things, as I said, a lot of the river communities, river organizations, and the arts communities.
Do you know what you spend on overhead? I mean, do you have an office? Do you spend money on rent? How do you?
The only thing we get most of it donated. We were using the rec center for a while, which was on the other side of our community, and now we've been trying to change it up, and we're starting to use Doris Place for our board meetings.
Right.
So just to try to change it up. It's been over at the rec center for a while. We use Apple One for our minutes, and that's been working out really well. And other than that, we don't spend a lot on our overhead, and we'll spend on refreshments, things like that. But most of it, or printing. But we try to keep a lot of those expenses to a minimal because most of our board members agree that we want that as much money to go into the community as possible.
Very good.
Yeah.
Commissioner Eckhart?
Is there anything we can do to make your job easier? What would you like us to change?
I'm sure there's something.
Thank you.
I can't think offhand, but I know you guys are there and available, and Don's there if we need something. So, I'm personally not shy about asking if there's something going on. We were able to use the city council office, some of the resources. They've been providing translation equipment. We used again at the candidate forum. That was a huge help. They were able to arrange chairs, tables, things like that. So, as an extension, not directly maybe done, but as an extension, the city council office, we've been tapping into those resources. But since you brought it up, I'll make sure to talk to you personally next time I need something.
Just send me an email.
I will. Thank you.
Just, there was mention of this neighborhood council recently being revived. Any important lessons learned that you took away from this whole revival process?
Yeah, that's something that, to be honest, we've been talking a lot about recently because I think it is on a rebound. We've been getting a lot of board members now are more active, and we've been doing a great job with that. And so think it's finding out the issues that, I was having this conversation the other day, and I think, I'm someone who just wants to just in general represent the community and try to help wherever is needed and, get involved in a few things. But some board members aren't interested in doing all that. Some board members are interested in just the LA River or just the arts community or those one issues. And I think it's the challenge, and maybe other neighborhood councils have the same struggles, is just finding out, well, what's everyone interested in? Because not everyone's going to speak up and say, oh, I don't want to really do that. I just want to work on the river projects or whatever. And so I think trying to figure that out and trying to find out how everyone can connect and be positive and be productive on the neighborhood council. I think that's probably the biggest ongoing challenge. But, slowly, people are getting involved. We're doing a lot more activities and things like that. So, I feel good about the direction we're going.
That's great. Any other questions from the commissioners? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Commissioners, my name is Rusty Millar. I'm Secretary presently of the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council. And also I was here that night when we were certified by the neighborhood bond commissioners back then. And prior to that, I'd spent a year and a half with the formation committee developing the bylaws and getting to where we were. I just have to applaud everybody that gets involved in the neighborhood council system, because it's so great, and you hear so many comments from people in your community and others, and it's been a great way for people in the entire city to coalesce and form positions on things, because quite frankly, whether it's Silver Lake or Coastal San Pedro or Tarzana, we all have the same issues, maybe slanted a slightly different color at some point, but I hear so many of the same things, and the support that we've had from Bonk over the years has been great. I'm an original board member, and I've never missed one of our governing board meetings in almost 10 years now. I talk about having no life. I see Gracie down working in her office at 9 o'clock at night when we have the budget advocates meetings, and I've been involved in that process since the mayor started that, which has really been great. And you've seen the city council and the mayor kind of turn that ship of state around a little bit to listening more to the community, because we have people like Dr. Wiseman and Jay Handel and other notables that do, want to hold people's feet to the fire. Certainly with the Lank Commission and organization and others that Doug has been involved with, it's a great opportunity to get things out in front of people. And as far as Commissioner Lux, I think you asked about outreach. In the region that I represent, in the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council, Region 4, since the beginning, we've typically had the most number of people that turn out and vote of the other regions. But I'm the sort of person, a little old-fashioned politics, I go out and I have knocked on every single address in the region that I represent multiple times. The turnout, I would certainly like it to be larger, but the fact that they're turning out. But people seem to find out about the neighborhood councils, because we certainly get a lot of impact pertaining to land use issues, which I'm sure any neighborhood council in the city can talk about. And one thing that Silver Lake, I think, has been, it was one of our former board members, Jason Lyon, that started the council file issue. But he's the one that spearheaded that all by himself to get that going for all the neighborhood councils. And shortly after we were elected in late 2003, I heard a meeting that Councilmember LaBonge was hosting, one of the folks from Water and Powers are to propose an 18% water rate increase, and my ears sort of perked up on that. And within a few weeks, there was 6 of us, myself included, around the city, all neighborhood council people. Ken Draper from Mid-City West, who many of you know, and others that are not involved any longer, but we started the the movement to develop the water and power MOU with neighborhood councils. And I know that, I remember Jim McDaniel, who's the head of the water department now, and Jerry Dewey, his former boss, and the 6 of us. We sat up in the farmer's market in one of the overflow dining areas, wrote down a kind of our own internal MOU to get the whole process started, which was great because it brought neighborhood councils really into the family of departments, if you will. So, neighborhood councils really can have an impact on the city, and I think that certainly work that all the folks who have been here tonight and throughout the 1,700 people on all the neighborhood councils really is great. And diversity in Silver Lake, well, that's moved around now that we're the hipster capital of the planet. What you don't see are those hipsters stepping forward and getting involved in the community. Our makeup of our board is in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and so it's diverse, and it's just a tapestry of the city of Los Angeles, and I'm really glad to be a part of it. And I know Commissioner Eberhard has been involved longer than I have, because Coastal St. Peter was one of the really early ones, and certainly the support. What you could do for us certainly is get more money to help more funding for the department, because even though the budget advocates can pound on the table about that, at the end of the day, it's their support that helps the neighborhood councils actually function. And some of the things we use our money on, there's certainly overhead for having people take minutes. Like for Apple One, we have 2 committees that use that. We rent a school space for our meetings. We've put on 2 candidates forums this year and 2 years ago for City Council, and the one that we had earlier in the spring, where all 12 council candidates for CD13 were there. Standing room only in the room, which I thought we certainly appreciate the support that commissioners have given the neighborhood councils over the years, and also from the city attorney's office and others. So, anyways.
Questions from commissioners?
Good to see you.
I tried to listen to what you're asking the others.
I was going to ask you the same question. Basically, how do you spend your money mostly?
Well, some of it goes for, like I said, for taking minutes. We rent a school space that costs us $75 a month. And a lot of it goes to neighborhood purposes grants. We've given money to some of the schools within our area. We've given money to cadet programs. Silver Lake is split by Rampart and Northeast Police Division. We've given money to their cadet programs in the past. There's a Sunset Hollywood Free Clinic is located right there. We've given money to them. We've given money to PATH, People Assisting Homeless, which is just outside Silver Lake, but it's certainly something that impacts all of our communities. We've taken donations from our state senators. They said, we can give you 25 turkeys to the neighborhood council, and we go find people in the community that may need it, or to some organizations like the Hollywood Free Clinic for their clientele, to help them out during time. So it's just different things we've done. Arts and culture projects, painting some of the phone boxes around the corners. That's a big thing right now. Just a lot of other things that that comes to the community that has a broad benefit to everybody. Sometimes some of those things where it's a little finite as to maybe it's a personal project of someone. Sometimes it doesn't maybe get as funded as largely, but Relay for Life and other things. So we try to do things that are community, right there in the Silver Lake area. Graffiti cleanup, thought beautification.
Well, you make us feel good when we hear reports like yours and the gentleman before you.
Yeah, thank you. And we certainly appreciate your support.
Thank you, Mr. Millar.
I'm Torrin Donovan. I'm the co-chair of the Atwater Village Neighborhood Council. most of our board is new. I came on last year, and our election, I think, brought it to being, a majority, or at least half of the board that's there now is new. And so that turnover is nice because we have this exciting new energy and less fear of failure. And so that's something we're trying to take advantage of. But certainly we're seeing roadblocks because we don't know how to accomplish things. But thankfully we have gotten support from the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. Ivan Spiegel and Terrence Gomes with the Councils for Councils program has helped us out already. And that's been really helpful. So we've taken lessons from that. Certainly one of the things that we want to do right away is to increase the recognition of the service of the neighborhood council to the community. We had less than 150 people show up at our election, which was more than had occurred 2 years prior, but we would like to see a lot more people participating in the elections and certainly coming to the neighborhood council and using us as a resource, participating in our meetings. And one manner in which we're trying to solve that or increase that is committee use. There wasn't much committee use prior to now, and so we're having regular committee meetings. We're really making sure that stakeholders know that their participation would be wonderful to have at those things, and we're seeing that occur pretty quickly in the last 4 months. It's been a dynamic shift. Certainly the committee that's probably done the most work so far is our outreach committee, and they have all sorts of exciting ideas. The neighborhood council has always had great events, like Halloween on the boulevard, the tree lightings, the movie nights, summer nights on the boulevard, those sorts of things. But now we're trying to do things more consistently. So people don't just think, well, somebody put on an event. Maybe it was Friends of Atwater Village, maybe it was the Atwater Village Residents Association, maybe it was the Atwater Village Chamber of Commerce, that they know that as a neighborhood council that we're there always as an opportunity for people to get involved. The really fun outreach program we have going right now is a logo redesign contest, which we're doing primarily through social media, but we did at our regular farmers market outreach table. We had people voting there as well. So we'll have a brand new logo very soon. We're learning efficiencies as we go along, and that's something that we can always use support on probably, is what the best practices are. I know that there are many places where you can find information from Lang, from Bonk, from Dunn, but it's not necessarily the easiest stuff to find. Some stuff sitting on Dunn's old website that you can still access, and some stuff is on the forefront of the new website. But it would be great if there was just sort of a, I don't know what it would be. I mean, we get handbooks, we get lots of materials, but it would be somehow if it could be cataloged or just clear to tell us exactly what to do or what new board members could do. I think the last thing that I wanted to note is that we as well are a very small neighborhood council. Atwater Village has 15,000 residents, but we're the democratically voted best neighborhood in Los Angeles according to Curbed. And so it's important though to maintain the goodness in our community to have a powerful neighborhood council. And so we have apprehension that with any funding shifts, I know there has been a discussion I've seen that the size of the budget for neighborhood councils gets pinned to the population size of the neighborhood. And I think if that were to ever come before a body to think about, I think that would be a faulty idea because we have the same operating expenses that any other neighborhood council has to have the bandwidth to get to the neighborhood as we'd like to. So thank you very much for everything that you do for us. We're very excited to have made it to 10 years.
Questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Luck?
Okay. I haven't asked the other two this, but actually normally there's a letter with questions on it that you're supposed to be sent. I don't know if you were sent it, but...
I found it. I kind of glanced at it when I ran over here.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a couple of those questions. I just found it myself. It's in my package. Have all of your board members complied with the mandatory ethics training?
I know that there was an issue. I think our board secretary was haranguing people, and I think he finally managed to get the last few holdouts to do it. We don't have written into our own bylaws a mechanism of punishment or a mechanism of enforcement for that. So there wasn't, I mean, I know that some neighborhood councils say like a 90-day, within 90 days or no voting. We didn't have that written into our bylaws.
Oh, you can do it as a standing rule. That's
Sure,
what we
sure.
did.
We don't
Yeah,
have that written
yeah.
yet.
We've done that and it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
So, my neighborhood council, we, the commission. How do you make decisions about how you spend your money? How does it come, I mean, what's the process?
At this point now, dependent upon the issue, it would go to the interest committee. So for an outreach item, it would go to the outreach committee to vote on, then to the budget and finance committee, and then to the full board. Some items are not applicable to committees yet, although we'd like everything to be vetted by special committees, and then go to the budget and finance committee. Often, I mean, the concern for us as the neighborhood council is that there are needy bodies that do not know to utilize us as a resource that don't apply. And then there are other ones that know exactly how to do it and keep showing up. So for instance, I think the circumstance we dealt with was the schools, the 2 elementary schools have in the neighborhood, were very good at accessing us for money, but the 4th R program in the neighborhood, which is probably in the most impoverished part of our neighborhood, was not. Because they don't have the time. They don't have volunteers that are helping them, and the employees are stretched thin as it is to be able to access that. So that would be the other part of it. The process that we'd like to include more is letting people know that we're there to utilize for that support. Although certainly we want to make sure that we're not just being used for improving the things around the community and overlooking the importance of letting people know, using our funding to let people know that we're there as a resource to them. So using most of our funding for outreach, or definitely pinning any neighborhood purposes grant to advertising for the neighborhood council. That the neighborhood council is getting recognition from the schools that are receiving money or any other nonprofit organization.
Sounds good.
Commissioner Mann.
I guess it's, oh, were you finished?
No, I was just going to ask what the composition of your board is, like how many and the diversity and...
It's 17 people. I think it sides a little bit male, but it's definitely age diverse. And there is, I think the neighborhood skews more Latino than our board shows, but there is diversity on the board.
It sounds like are you familiar with our standards and best practices document? Is that on the website? So it sounds like you were asking for that, right?
Sure, that would be a good thing. I mean, the other aspect, I think, of learning where the support mechanisms exist is the alphabet soup of the different bodies that support neighborhood councils, Spawn, Blank, and Dunn. So it's sort of like, I might have just known to go to the neighborhoods and pick up resources from Dunn, but Dunn knows that Bonk already has a good standard practice document. I didn't know the Bonk, what that was 6 months ago per se.
So do you know where it is?
On the website?
Uh-huh.
Steve will know.
Somebody has to know.
Yeah.
I mean, there are resources that we've tapped into.
Looking like,
Well, I can give you.
Perhaps someone could email
so
it to
he'll tell
you.
you where it is.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's, one of our...
But there are rules that we like that I think that Dunn built correctly, or that the manner that the neighborhood council was built was to leave it up to the neighborhoods. For instance, what is the requirement of quorum for committees? Does Dunn have that information, or is it up to the neighborhood councils to come up with those things? I mean, it's nuanced, and it's going to be always a discovery, but I think as new people come onto the board, it's hard to sort of explain, like, well, it's an organic living beast, and it constantly demands thought as to where things may be. I don't know if there's any way to solve it.
You have bylaws, though, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're pretty simple though, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they don't talk about that kind of stuff.
Not everything. I mean, we actually created several more standing rules since we had our last election, and then we're actually going to en masse turn them into bylaws.
So the wireframe, they're...
I just got the wireframe.
Oh, okay. So
the thing is that our old board members may have had all of those things.
Uh-huh.
But that actually probably would be the most helpful thing if anybody had ever figured out is how to take the brain trust that's developed from the old board and give it to the new board. I know that certain boards do have emeritus, but we didn't. Our transition basically our most involved leaders
Left.
left and just left. So, and it wasn't under duress or anything like that. I mean, some moved out of the neighborhood, some had put in all the energy they could into the neighborhood and then needed to step away. But there wasn't a formalized process for sharing the things that we could have used later.
So do your bylaws conform to the waterfront?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it went through the
process.
especially when everything had to shift for the
Yeah,
election. Yeah,
right.
that conformed for sure.
Okay.
But there are nuanced things that just don't
That's
exist in our
alright.
bylaws.
That's,
Yeah.
that's sure.
Please.
I just got a note from Janet that the standards for the commission are on Power LA website on the commission page under policies. If you'd like to take a look at those.
Makes sense.
Right where they should
Good
be.
platform, yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Berhart.
Gee, I think maybe we need a welcome wagon for neighborhood councils when they get new boards, you know? Especially if it involves like candy bars or something.
That's what those meetings
Yeah, the manual is, and the trainings are one thing, but we've been talking about this, about doing like an orientation package that goes to every new board member. And this actually also helps us track who's on the board as well. And so we're actually in the process of completing something like that for the upcoming elections.
Okay, now I have another question. Are you having fun?
I'm having a great time. I love it. I mean, I'm just sort of, you asked the question, what can we do to help more? And so I'm, this thing could be a little bit better. I mean, we have a very a friendly board, which I think makes a big difference in happiness. At the point that people aren't enjoying each other's company, I think it's pointless. I work for an organization that relies upon volunteers as well, and I know that that's the single biggest goal of any beneficial organization is to give positivity to the people. And so I think a neighborhood council wall has a very serious job of making the neighborhood as best as possible. But it should also be enriching for the people participating with it, whether it's the stakeholders, the committee members, or the board members. And so we're very lucky to all get along at this point, and certainly it's a goal of everyone on the board to do that. So yeah, wonderful.
Good. That's great. Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, well, thank you very much, and good luck moving forward. I think that wraps it up with respect to this agenda item. And I think we're closing in on the end, so why don't we try to get through the next couple of agenda items? Okay. Agenda item number 10, Commission Committee Reports. And Commissioner Mack, if you could provide the ad hoc committee regarding standards and outreach.
Sure. So we are coming up on our Empower LA Awards cycle. We're really excited about that, and I feel like the session that happened in the City Council was a great way to kind of kick off this cycle, the new cycle. And so we have already drafted the nomination, and let me just pass it. You pass it. And I think you all have seen this before, but just to refresh, our goal is to release the call within the next week or so, and then do the outreach required to get the call out to everybody, neighborhood councils, council offices, the broader community, so that neighborhood councils can be nominated for the awards, looking at a nomination deadline of July 12th, and then reviewing after that with an August 19th announcement of the awards, and then the presentation at the Congress of Neighborhoods on September 28th. So I think we're all very excited and looking forward to this process, and want you in the audience to really start to put your thinking caps on in terms of who you'd like to nominate for the Empower LA Awards, which I think one of the things that we're most happy about is it seems like the system has really embraced this, and neighborhood councils in general are excited about it, as well as others in city government. So that's any of my fellow commissioners have questions. 3 of us are on the outreach committee, so that just leaves you, Jack.
Commissioner Everhart?
The only thing I would say is the event at City Hall, at City Council a couple weeks ago was just incredible.
It was.
And, you know, I think we all pointed out that the 7 winners, the 7 neighborhood councils who received these awards, the things that they have done are just wonderful, positive stories about what neighborhood councils can accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And each of them was just incredibly worthy
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what they did.
Yeah, we were lucky to get the pool that we did, given our short timeline this year. So hopefully we'll get a much even better pool of candidates. Yeah, better and bigger. Yeah, absolutely, because we've got a much longer time frame. So that's, you remember we talked about doing, focusing on something every month in terms of outreaching. So that's this month. And then what we'd like to do next month is really focus on the results of the plan review commission, so our committees. So so we're excited about that, and it seems like you're on schedule. So that will dovetail nicely, I think, with what we're planning. And, you know, I want to thank the Dunn staff for their partnership in actually getting the word out. And we're looking forward to our new commissioner coming on to help us with outreach in South LA and, you know, other committees which may not quite be, you know, in the social media world and you know, coming up with new strategies to get the word out that way. But you know, I'm excited about what the opportunities are that we're presenting with.
Great.
Any other input?
Well, I just want to say, I'm sorry I wasn't at the city council meeting. I love things like that, but I was out of the country, so I couldn't go. But I was happy to read about it, and hope I can be there next time.
Yes, me too. I was out of the city, but it sounds like it's really getting momentum, and we should really. I'm hoping that all the neighborhood councils will be self-interested to promote.
I think they will. I think,
and we'll get some great.
We're going to be in trouble next time for not picking people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be the opposite.
It's going to be a much
And
more.
yeah, and I just want to say to my fellow committee members how wonderful it's been to work with you. You know, we've been such a good team. I just love it. So, you know, look forward to working with you in the next phase.
Great. So I think that wraps up agenda item number 10. Why don't we move on to number 11, discussion regarding the recommendations from the Commission's regional plan review committees and the final meeting. Commissioner Everhart?
Yes, we are proceeding apace. The Valley Group had its last Session 7 meeting yesterday. The other 2 groups will be meeting in the next week or so. We have tentatively scheduled a sort of joint meeting for Saturday, May 25th. I'm not sure that that's going to go through because the location we had picked is not available, but Commissioner Schaefer and I are working on it. We may move it a little farther out into June. The idea at that last meeting is to sort of bring up items of discussion where there wasn't necessarily consensus, but where we might be close on consensus. Things where there is no consensus, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any consensus, we're probably not even going to consider because we don't, want to take up people's time in a way that's not useful. And on to the current issue, which is factual basis stakeholder. I think many of you have gotten lots of emails today.
Where did that come from?
Sorry, that's my doing. We had a couple meetings ago, there had been requests to give neighborhood councils ample time. We had decided to give them 60 days. 40 days had been used up. I saw the report from Joe Hari at Dunn that we had responses from, I believe, 3 out of 95 neighborhood councils and about 22 individuals. I slept on it and said, that's not good enough. So yesterday morning, I drafted and had the department send out the email that I think you all saw, which essentially said, we need to hear from you. You know, don't complain that nobody asked if you don't. And we have been flooded, which makes me very, very happy. Because things like factual basis stakeholder are really fundamental to this system. And we need to hear from as many people as possible before we make decisions. And so I'm very, very pleased. I hope to see a lot more emails. Sorry, Paul, about flooding your inbox there, but I think this is so important. And if you remember, maybe a year and a half ago, maybe a little longer, at the retreat that was held just before Commissioner Schaefer and I came onto the commission, where then Deputy Mayor Larry Frank essentially said, don't make big decisions without consulting neighborhood councils. So that really, more than anything else, has been what drove me to do what I did yesterday. And I'm just very pleased that it worked and that we got the response. And I think it's just going to be incredibly valuable to us in 13 days when we sit down to actually discuss this and take a vote.
Is there going to be a way? I know I really appreciate the offer to combine the responses so we can review them. Is there a way to really look at the distribution of responses to get a sense of, you know, who's responded and where the gaps are?
Absolutely. Because, I mean, just from, I think we can, I'm not quite sure how involved it will be, but we should be able to figure out, based on those email addresses, what neighborhood councils or what regions have responded.
Yeah.
And also, if we're going to do that, how many were individuals versus board votes?
Yeah.
Of the full board, as opposed to...
Yeah, and I have to tell you, I am not happy about the number of boards, because they all saw it. I mean, we sent out separate emails. You know, Gracie and Stephen and Joe too have done yeoman's work in terms of getting the word out. I mean, we've really been nudging them as much as possible. I didn't want to do it every day, but I thought about it. I have to tell you, I don't know how many boards are ultimately going to have responded, because, for example, a couple of weeks ago when I sent out an email to all of the harbor area people and said, hey, I need to hear from you, I had a response from a neighborhood council president who said, oh, we took this up and voted on it and took a position. And I said, are you going to tell anybody? She says, I guess we should send you a letter. I mean, this is kind of what, you know, causes me to react the way I react sometimes. It's like, you know, as I tell people, if you sit around and talk to each other, it doesn't mean that anybody else can hear you. I mean, this is, for the outreach committee, this is a big problem. Neighborhood councils that operate in vacuums. And so I figure if some neighborhood councils just haven't paid attention or haven't realized what the deadline was, we can at least hear from individual board members.
And there seems to be, I mean, looking at the emails, I haven't counted, but there seems to be a decent response with respect to neighborhood councils that are starting to weigh in as well. So, and there's a few more weeks, so hopefully this will keep rolling in.
And just to let you know, I actually have some other ideas about spurring comment, but I don't know if I want to get into that. I haven't talked to Stephen Box about it yet, so.
All right. Any other questions? I just have a quick question. With respect to, you had mentioned that there's going to be basically 3 types of issues. One where there's almost all consensus.
Right.
One where there could be a pathway for people to have consensus, and one category where there's not going to be consensus at all. Can you give us a preview as to which issues drop into which buckets?
Well, okay. In terms of consensus, I think factual basis, there's virtual unanimity. You know, as you have seen. And I haven't read through all of the minutes, for example. It seems to me that the idea of creating a policy to allow for subdivision of neighborhood councils is something that, again, I can't say for sure, but I think that's something that's going to be on our agenda. With regard to the sunshine ordinance, it looks now like two of the groups have essentially said, forget it, we'll stick with the Brown Act. So I would say that's probably not going to happen. Interestingly enough, the third group was unanimous that they wanted a sunshine ordinance. But, you know, again, we may take it up at that final session, but it's not looking good for the sunshine ordinance.
Another question, just offhand, because I attended two of the Valley meetings. I didn't know about the one yesterday. But one of the discussion items, I wonder if it came up, if you're aware of it, any other groups, was the allocation of funds in terms of comparison of how much is overhead versus outreach versus operations.
Yes.
Because that was really a big issue with the Valley.
Yeah, and I can report from the Harbor South and West group, it was very interesting. They weren't necessarily into the idea of mandating that certain percentages be required, so much as the idea that there may be some things neighborhood councils are spending money on that they really shouldn't be spending money on. You know, it's been a very interesting process. Again, I had wanted to get to some of the other groups, and it just didn't work out time-wise for me. But I can tell you, the group representing the Harbor and South LA and West LA has just been outstanding. The last meeting, I mean, we have had a couple of meetings where the discussion has been very thoughtful, very, very civil, and they just wanted to keep going. Some of us were looking at our watches going, we should leave now. But they just kept going. I mean, they were good. I mean, I'm assuming the other groups are probably about the same. But if we could hand out awards for just really good, smart people who really get, you know, nobody's getting paid. I did bring some cookies to the last one.
Bribing them.
Yeah, well, maybe that's why they wanted to stay. They needed to finish the cookies, but I think Gracie's been to a few of them. I suspect she would echo what I'm saying. It's, you know, and I guess one group had said, well, gee, we're just getting our stride, and in fact, if they want to keep meeting, they can keep meeting. I don't have a problem with that, but we are going to have a report. So this has been an excellent process, but totally unpredictable for me. I really couldn't sit down and have predicted where we would end up or what they would find to be important.
Yeah, that sunshine ordinance one, that's surprising to me.
Surprises me too.
Yes, General Manager Liu.
Just in regards to Commissioner Luck's comment about how monies are being used by neighborhood councils, the department, we're starting to look at that too. I did pull a report recently of the current funding, and out of $3.7 million the neighborhood council that's in the neighborhood council fund, approximately 1.3 of that was used for operations. 140,000 was used for neighborhood purposes grants, and another 30,000 was used for neighborhood improvement grants. Neighborhood improvements. And then the remaining category, which just totally slipped my mind, is $130,000.
So $1 million something on operations. What about outreach?
There's no separate category for. Oh, I'm sorry. That's it.
Yeah.
143,000 was for outreach and 130,000 for neighborhood purposes grants.
And $1 million for operations.
Correct.
Something's wrong with that picture.
I know, and I think the thing is just raising the awareness, neighborhood councils.
Or coming up with maybe not mandates, Doug, but maybe guidelines for the a third, which is what the controller Laura Chick had recommended in what year was it now? 1996. So
right.
that would be just kind of recommended spending this much, because that's what the Valley was talking about, that some neighborhood councils are spending all their money on renting fancy offices and hiring staff, and they're not putting money back into the neighborhood, and therefore they don't get people coming out for elections because no one knows what they're doing.
Right. Well, I mean, for me, it's more about, are you being effective as your neighborhood council? And for some people, maybe, they need that office or they need that administrative assistant to help them disseminate the work. I mean, every neighborhood council is different. So I think, for us, we wanted to raise the awareness of neighborhood councils just to say, are you achieving the mission? Are you making government more responsive to local needs? It's great to give out grants every once in a while, but are you disproportionately targeting your money towards that? So I think, for us, we will be showing the neighborhood councils a snapshot of how they're working.
Excellent.
Commissioner.
Yeah, just a little bit of history. As Rusty Millar said, I have been around for a long time. When the neighborhood councils first received funding under the previous administration of Mayor Hahn, in 2002, in fact, February 11th, 2002, and I happen to know that date because the very first council to be funded was Coastal San Pedro when I was the president. The purpose of the money, $50,000 then, was strictly operations. The things like grants and stuff came along later because a lot of neighborhood councils didn't spend that money on hiring people to take minutes or publishing a newsletter or whatever. And, I would just sort of remind everybody that was the original plan for funding neighborhood councils, was so that they could get up and running and be effective and efficient. And so the idea that 1.3 million goes to operations and whatever else doesn't, I think that's exactly in line with what was intended. And frankly, if a neighborhood council board has a good paid person who takes care of their minutes and notifying people of meetings and whatnot, more power to them. Because as Ronald Reagan, of all people, once said in terms of being an effective government leader, seriously, Ronald Reagan, never do anything for yourself that someone else will do for you. So your job as an executive or a leader is to concentrate on policy, responding to your constituents. Yeah, well, I'm just telling you. It's like, as a neighborhood council president, I could never figure out why I was sitting there at 11 o'clock at night typing up an agenda.
That's because you didn't delegate.
Well, sometimes there's no one to delegate to, and you got to pay somebody.
Commissioner Mack?
Yes, Ms. Brenda. I mean, that's all well and good, but the analysis is not complete because, we have $1.3 million being spent, but do we know if the neighborhood councils are more effective because they're spending that money on operations? And that would be a great question to answer.
May I? Actually, remember once upon a time we had a working group that put together the evaluations, which are mentioned in the plan and which have never happened. I mean, that's where those things should be done. Yeah, I think you're
stressing that.
I think you might remember. I was on that working group.
I think we should do an assessment.
I think it's incredibly important.
Absolutely.
But you can't. Again, something that's been a regular complaint of mine. I really don't like to be asked to make policy decisions based on anecdote. And that's pretty much what this commission has done for a long time. I mean, this is why I'm sending emails saying, I want to hear from all 1,700 of you people. Because to ask me to make decisions that are going to affect this system over the next decade or more, based on, bluntly, 3 people showing up here and doing public comment, that doesn't work for me. And in terms of, the idea of saying to a neighborhood council, here are 4 or 5 categories, and you have to neatly fit your spending. I guarantee you they're going to do what they've always done. It's like, well, this really is an outreach, but we're going to call it outreach because we've already spent all that budget. I mean, it's like I always say, and you're going to hear it again, Stephen, when you try to build a better mousetrap, all you end up with are better mice.
I can't speak for the processes of previous commissions, but I do commend all the efforts to try to get more data and get more data and to make our decision making kind of aligned to feedback from neighborhood councils and from as much. I think we can all agree that we can. Feedback is good, and the more the better. And also I would encourage the department to continue to do these types of investigations and also try to mine for this kind of information to help our decision making be better. Commissioner
I just
Ross?
needed to respond
Sure.
just a teens to Commissioner Everett. This commission, and I've been on it for quite a number of years now, has never made a policy decision based on anecdote. We've done everything over time with public hearings and as much input as we possibly could and as much outreach as we could. So I really don't like hearing that comment or your feeling about saying that, because we've done nothing quickly without great deliberation over time. So take it back.
Okay. So
I have one question that's directly related to the plan review, and that's, so our goal is to take something to the city council before the end of the fiscal year. Is that right?
Factual basis stakeholder, yes. The rest of it, no.
So, in factual basis, I remember when we started the process, I was thinking that we would have more than that to take to them. But, are you thinking that they're going to want to vote on that?
Vote on factual basis?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because Councilmember Huizar, in fact, at the event at City Council,
Right.
I got waylaid in the hall in the back,
Oh, okay.
wanting to make sure that we were going to take this up at our meeting of the 20th, because they have a concern that it get done.
Okay.
And so, I know when I said, let's give them 60 days, I thought the guy's head was going to explode, but...
Right.
So, I'm kind of walking a fine line here. But yeah, that was the one thing, and that's why it was in the first session, and that's why it's sort of been separate, because that was requested. Because the original intent was to just wrap everything up in one report,
Right.
so that we could see how the pieces work together or not. Because we've had this in the working group meetings where someone said, well, we really can't do this unless we do this. And that's not for 2 more sessions. So it's, there's some pieces that have to work together.
Right.
So.
all right, why don't we take public comment on this item?
Excuse me.
There is one speaker card here, Joseph Reiser.
Thank you. Where was I? I mentioned this was the smallest neighborhood council, didn't I? And this gentleman told you that theirs was one of the smallest as well. In fact, it's the 4th. And if you want a field trip before you leave the area, walk up to the edge of the river, you might be able to throw a coin across, like George Washington, to the 2nd smallest neighborhood council in Los Angeles, Greater Cypress Park. That's all somewhat related. You've been talking about factual basis. There's a tiny stepsister to factual basis. Maybe it's the less played flip side of the 45. It's called subdivision. It was a motion brought forward by Councilmember Huizar at the same time, and it deals with a right that neighborhood councils have to subdivide. I don't like the term subdivision. It's better than secession, but maybe we could call it self-determination, just for the sake of it. The timetable on that was supposed to be 90 days from when it was presented. It first went to Education Neighborhood 180 days ago, almost. By the time we meet again, it would have been 180 days. And for perfectly good reasons, Councilmember Huizar said backburner that one, fix factual basis. But as we're approaching factual basis, some things are going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. The NC plan groups are going to be done. The education neighborhoods will meet again. You'll meet again. Hopefully there'll be something moving forward for factual basis. So what those of us who are interested in the stepsister motion, look like stepbrother, whatever you want to do, we'll make it gender neutral, is ask you to take that off the back burner, look at it again. Hopefully it won't take another 90 days, but if it does, that's perfectly fine. There are communities, there are neighborhood councils that need to find a better way and a better system and a better setup for themselves. And the plan guarantees them that right. What's been missing is a policy. And I think in some ways, many of you have acknowledged the need for that policy already. I hope we'll move forward together with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have another speaker card here, Jay Handel.
Hi, good evening. Jay Handel from West LA. A couple of things real quick. I've been listening in the last few days about the factual basis report and what seems to be coming through. And I'm listening to Commissioner Eberhardt talk about he doesn't like to do things that are anecdotal. And I just wonder if, in fact, you've considered putting a survey out to all of the neighborhood councils on the language, as opposed to hoping someone's going to show up here at a meeting, because obviously, attendance isn't always wonderful. So you might want to think about doing that, because that would be really good outreach. Give a check mark, like the template, 1, 2, 3, what would you really like to see? And then you might have some better data from neighborhood council people. Because outreach, and I'm not quite sure about those numbers that I heard, it's probably a good idea. But the outreach really, when I hear the numbers, that I heard before, I know that my own neighborhood council spent $32,000 this year on outreach. So if I spent, 18% or 20% of the total outreach, I'm a little concerned about the outreach numbers. But in any case, going back to factual basis, I think we have, as a neighborhood council system, and I'm the one who always yells, we're part of a bigger system, and we need to have structure. And I think leaving it up to individual neighborhood councils to determine what a stakeholder is, what factual basis is creating anarchy, and it's insane, and it's just going to put us in a bigger mess going down the line. And I came a long way to give you that 2 cents. So if I get change coming, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any final thoughts on this agenda item before we move on?
Didn't we talk about doing a survey? I thought we had that conversation.
Actually, before sending out the email of yesterday, I thought about a survey. And I'll tell you why I did the email instead. Is because it's actually easier for someone to get this message and just hit reply with their thoughts than it is to direct them via link to a survey, which probably would have a few steps to it. That's why I didn't go with the survey. I thought carefully about this, and how do you prompt people to actually respond? The other part is it helps to send a message that is, and when I say hot, I don't necessarily mean this in an anger sense, but hot enough that people will respond to it or be prompted to respond to it. And I have to say, based on the emails we've received, I suspect it has worked better than a survey. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't do a survey, and I have no problem with doing a survey.
Nothing wrong with that, doing the both.
No, I'm not saying that there is. I'm just saying that, and having had an entire career in trying to sell people stuff, in essence, okay? I have some idea of what works and what doesn't. And I can tell you, remember we did a survey on, what was the last survey on? Yeah. And I think we got, less than 100 responses? Oh, I know what it was. It was the posting policy. Yeah. So, maybe I should have done an email like this on the posting policy. It's not too late, right? But yeah, we can do a
Well,
survey.
I want to caution you because it's hard to say, when you get like even 20 emails in your email box about something, it feels like 1,000.
Good.
So, I think, you just.
But that's what we want. That's what we want. We want people to respond to us in a meaningful way. Not that a survey, which may or may not be statistically significant, isn't response, but I like this. I like people coming back at us with actual words.
Commissioner Wells?
I think emails from people are people who are those that have a strong feeling one way or the other. A survey might elicit, my feeling is people that are happy with the situation or don't care one way or the other aren't going to respond because it's not that important to them. Either they're not unhappy with the situation as it is or whatever. But a survey at least gives people a chance to think about it rather than to respond emotionally. Talk about anecdotal, I think that's more anecdotal. I personally would really strongly recommend for this important issue that there be some sort of survey that we can add to. It's easier to calculate the data from a survey than an email, which is, I feel this way. They were all over the place. But I really recommend it. We did talk about that several meetings ago, and that wasn't supposed to be the plan.
Well, I know it wasn't the plan. I mean, that was one of the tools we talked about, but we didn't necessarily say.
Well, I think that it's not too late to do that.
No, it's not.
Okay, so why don't we do it? And one of the things that I've been hearing, and I can't remember where I read it, I should have brought the material, was renaming, the part of the problem with factual basis stakeholder, and I know there's lots of issues and concerns, is the name of factual basis stakeholder. And there was some document that I read that was referred to as community interest.
That was Jill Banks-Farad's idea.
And that is a
stakeholder.
What is it called?
Community interest.
That is much less threatening and invasive, and if it were named that from the first place, it might have been accepted a little bit more. Just anecdotally from my own neighborhood council, which is my only immediate reference, is that we did change our bylaws to include one factual basis stakeholder seat, and I've had two factual basis stakeholders since then who are two of the best board members we've ever had. One was the former longtime principal of Venice High School, who's retired and doesn't live there, who's head of our education committee, and the other lived directly across the street from the dividing line and was part of the community, but her address was across the street, and she's not on the board now, she's just retired and then principal, but Jacobs is on, was one of the hardest working and best respected board members we've ever had. So our board is not unhappy at all with having changed our bylaws and had one place because we've had such excellent results. So you're not going to hear from us mainly because we're not unhappy. But maybe if the name were changed, it would have been accepted because the people that we have are, what did you call it? Community of interest. Why can't I say community interest people? Because they are, and they clearly are. So, just my anecdotal response.
Just question for General Manager Liu. What do you think would be the timing in terms of trying to get out a survey? We did discuss it at the last meeting. And I don't necessarily see the letter and a survey being mutually exclusive in any sense. Is there? Do you have bandwidth and the capability of sending something out fairly quickly?
The earliest we would do it would be Friday.
Friday?
With our newsletter.
Okay. I think that works. More data, the better.
One thing, basically what got sent today was a survey. It's just a different kind of survey. It's not like in SurveyMonkey, but it is asking people for their sense. It's just a little bit open-ended. I think that's the challenge, is that, how do you evaluate the responses? I guess it's pretty, the question is not so broad that it's hard to evaluate. But, just another format to send it out in, right? Given our closing window for input.
Okay. Any final thoughts on this agenda item? Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll be getting into the nitty-gritty in the next. I know for a fact we're going to be getting into factual basis at the next meeting, as well as the nitty-gritty on all the other issues as we get. Not at the next meeting, but in the meetings to come as we receive rolled up reports on what the feedback's been. Okay, so why don't we move on then to agenda item number 12, which is commission business. Any announcements or other issues with under this agenda item that the commissioners would like to report on? Commissioner Epperhart?
Yeah, just a brief announcement. The Coastal San Pedro Neighborhood Council is preparing for its annual selection, and I can tell you, because they asked me to help them out, their call for candidates involved a mailing of an 8.5 by 11 postcard, a very nice one, to 12,000 addresses. Yeah, that was about $7,000, I think. And that's followed up with an item that's at the printer right now, which is to announce the actual selection, where, when, etc., and introduce the candidates. I can tell you that all 17 seats are up. They had, as of the publication deadline, 20 people running. They expect more. And based on what they're doing in terms of outreach this year, I expect a very big turnout. So, neighborhood councils, as they get on their feet, again, they're one with an almost entirely new board, and very few old hands. It's taken them pretty much a year to sort of find, where everything is and figure it out, but they've done it. And that's what neighborhood councils do. So I think their total outreach budget is going to end up being something like $12,000, $13,000. So, yeah, and money well spent.
Any other announcements, Commissioner Lutz?
The Venice Neighborhood Council a week ago Saturday, had the Santa Monica Airport forum. 250 people attended, lots of politicians, scientists, educators, community. It's been a big issue in Venice. I'm happy to say it was a very successful event. We also have a retreat planned, but I can't think of the date. It's in June. And we have a vote this week to require our Land Use and Planning Committee members to take the ethics training. All the board members are required to if they want to vote on any financial or land use issues. But now we're going to, if the board decides to vote on it, we're asking the board to vote on whether they think the Land Use and Planning Committee should also be required to take ethics training because we have so much development going on in Venice, so many liquor license applications. It turns out, we just found out because the organizers wrote an article that we have the highest concentration of alcohol licenses in the city. And restaurants keep coming for more and more and more and more. So that was an eye-opener. We hadn't known that. So it may have affected some of the votes that we had. So, and finally, our annual barbecue, our community-free barbecue for everybody in the community is being planned. The fire department does a lot of the barbecuing. It's a huge event, music, prizes. Everyone brings a side, and the committee does the cooking and with the fire department. So it's just a great community event. You'll all be invited. I can't think of the date right now. I think it's August 3rd, but whatever. We'll have invitations to the commission to come. That's it.
Just following up on what you just said, I was very disturbed by what the gentleman was talking about, referencing Mid-City West. And so that whole issue of the responsibility of neighborhood councils to make good decisions and have good deliberation around land use is huge. I mean, I think that's one of their important responsibilities, and to be able to effectively adjudicate and ethically adjudicate is, something that I think is really worth giving some attention to. So, I'm not sure what place that has in our conversation given our work priorities, but, I'd love to hear at some point from you, General Manager, about that and what your thoughts are in terms of building capacity in that area.
And definitely, if you have any resolution on that particular issue, if there's a way to maybe report back.
Yeah, it's hard because again, as I was mentioning, it comes down to the budget and our staff resources. I know Councils for Councils, I know Valley Alliance Neighborhood Councils Resource Board, and Plan Check Neighborhood Councils have provided and made available planning training. But it is interesting, I would like to speak with the Department of Planning and see what role they really expect from neighborhood councils in such planning applications. Is it just stakeholder input? I mean, are you really going through each of the points to adjudicate? What is their expectation? And that may actually help us in terms of coming up with perhaps something in regards to addressing this issue, which I think will become more and more problematic in the future.
Yeah, I would love, I would love to see some more outreach on training for land use committees. I know the Plan Check has meetings, but I don't know that it targets trainings for land use committees per se, and I think that's really important because it's very problematic in terms of how they pick cases, what the outreach to the neighbors is, and whose responsibility. I know I had a meeting with Greg Shue from Planning in response to complaints that I kept hearing that they only notify now 100 feet within of the project. And years ago in Venice, we're always very involved, but we were used to having at least 500 feet from every project. Now things go through and they get checked off, and people are really upset because they expect to have more input. So I think it would be really important to see if there's some more training that could be offered.
Well, our next series that begins in July, August, it will be around planning and how the basics of planning, and we're working with the planning department on that. We are also inviting whoever the new GM may be for planning, if there will be a GM because of the consolidation, for that person to come and speak and about the neighborhood council's role in planning. So we're working on doing that, and of course at the Congress of Neighborhoods in September they will have a session on planning, I'm sure.
Great. Any final announcements? Okay. I don't have any speaker cards for general public comments. Item number 13.
The last one, discerning the card?
Yes. Okay. Mr. Sadala. Go ahead and speak, and then if you can turn in a card afterward for a record.
Thank you. This is the most I've spoken at a commission in the last 10 years that I've been involved with neighborhood councils, not only as a city staff member who oversaw education neighborhoods committee, but I was the neighborhood council president. Just wanted to reiterate, in the packet, I hope that you guys do get a copy of what I submitted. The first thing under unacceptable purchases is, number one, any purchase made without the approval of a neighborhood council governing body, and any purchase that are not identified as board. Back in February, the neighborhood council finally passed another budget, but they're using that budget as a justification to pay for items that were expended without board approval, board knowledge, to the tune of a couple $1,000s. I'm glad Mr. Handel was here and Mr. Box was able to email him to show up to deal with some of these issues, because my concern is that the neighborhood council mentoring program, I think, is a great concept, but it goes too far when you have one person who's not accountable, who's not a staff member of the city of LA, kind of running the show and perhaps giving advice that may or may not be correct. I think it's important for the department to know that it's okay that they made a mistake. They paid thousands and thousands of dollars in auto deductions without telling anybody. I polled the board. I still am friends with a lot of board members. None of them, and I would say even to today, some of them aren't aware that there were all these monies that were spent. The board president is trying to get reimbursed for expenses that he made without board approval. Mr. Handel at the last executive committee said that, don't worry, we're going to take care of it. It's a done deal. We don't want your fingerprints on it. And that's on the videotape that I submitted today. So I think it's important that you guys look into it. You know, the department may not cover itself up, but it may not do its due diligence in identifying its weaknesses, especially on policies. And I think that's where Bonk needs to step in. And finally, I just want to make sure that all of you have a chance to see this letter that was submitted by the department to the neighborhood council members requiring all of them to do training. You know, Mr. Bessendorf, who's the current president, is basically a bully. He attacked verbally one of your city employees. You know, that should not be tolerable. And he also has challenged the treasurer to a fist fight. He speaks down to people, calls me and my wife idiots. So, I mean, this is not the kind of behavior that we should be proud of as neighborhood councils. And I implore that you, in a closed session, talk to Ms. Phillips about what's going on there. It's a serious issue. You know, I talked to Mr. Tutanich directly. I'm going to be meeting with him next week to share with them all of this stuff to see if he can perhaps look into it. But I think it's important, and the fact that Mr. Eppehard asked the question, now I'm asked to go to the City Ethics Commission. If that's where we need to go, then that's where I'll go, because these are some serious concerns and policies that were breached by the department. And they shouldn't have. They should know better. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jay Handel.
Again, Jay Handel. On a lighter note, announcements. The West LA Neighborhood Council is pleased to announce their third annual summer concert series in the West LA Municipal Center band shell. 3 concerts open to the public. There will be 8 of them this year. At the same time, that's on Wednesday nights starting in July. On Friday nights starting in July, we will have 8 movies in the park at Stoner Park. All family movies. Those movies, quite frankly, when we first bought all the equipment, thinking this would be a great idea, and we went out for the first time and did it, proved to us that we had no idea who we were serving in our community, because we had an entire Oaxacan community that lives in West LA show up and give us 50 volunteers and turn out to be really great stakeholders. So I have to tell you, you know, great outreach. They've become very involved. In fact, now the leader of that community was just put on our board last month to fill a vacant seat. Now, less happy. Just to clarify something I heard from a previous speaker, no, Mr. Box did not email me and tell me to come here. I do like to come every once in a while when I'm in the neighborhood, and I was at GPANC for their budget meeting tonight to make sure everything was going well as their mentor in that capacity. I will say that any of you who listened to what you just heard about, you know, taking over meetings and doing things, what I would do is say to the general manager, please burn the tapes and give copies of all of the CDs of the filmed meetings to all of the commissioners so they can see exactly how the meetings are run, who runs them, how much better they're run under new leadership, how much more organized they are, and quite frankly, how much more transparent they are to the community. So that's the real goal of the mentors, is to take neighborhood councils that were dysfunctional and in some cases had their funds frozen for lack of actually doing their job and getting them back into the mainstream to work with their community on a regular basis. And the C4C program has been extremely helpful in doing that. I'm in 3 neighborhood councils. I am in Echo Park, I am in Arroyo Seco, and I am in downtown Los Angeles. And I challenge any one of you up there to go to any one of those 3 councils and ask them to write a letter asking me to be removed. And any other C4C program person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that wraps up our general public comments, and so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Lutz?
I so moved, but I forgot to say one thing in my comments to the general manager. I'm sorry. The letters that go out to the councils who are going to testify, that is there any way to let them know that we expect them to come with this, to be answering these questions that the board, the commission sends a letter?
I'm sorry, you're speaking about the outreach letter?
Yeah, the outreach letter with the questions on the back.
Yeah, I know this comes up every time. We provide the information, we say, this is what they'll likely be asking you, if they can cover this information. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't.
Okay, thanks. I move that we adjourn.
Okay, Commissioner Luff moves.
Second.
Commissioner Knight seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.